Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what time of day you're watching this hangout. I'm John Jerkowitz, and this is Team Tuesday. Each week, I'm going to share with you some of my thoughts and ideas on teamwork, and hopefully, they'll give you something to think and reflect or chew on, and help you on your merry way. I was present at the creation of teamwork as a buzzword in our culture. Have to go back all the way to the early 80s when we embraced the technology of the Japanese, did so out of necessity. Words like Toyota, Honda, Mitsubishi had become part of our vocabulary. And so we look to the East and we look to see exactly what happened in that culture to create success. Only we overdid it. When I was growing up, there used to be a show called The Gong Show. And in it, contestants would come on and sing, dance, play potatoes hollowed out, all sorts of weird things. And there was a panel of celebrity judges. And at any point in time during a contestant's performance, the judge would be able to get up, take a large mallet, and hit a gong. And that meant their performance was over. Now, why do I share that story with you about teamwork? A few years back, I did some interviewing with a client to hire an accounting position. And he had a whole bevy of candidates scheduled for one day. And each candidate began to answer the questions the same way. Let me give you an example. Why should I hire you? Well, John, I'm a team player. What does that mean? Well, I'm a team player. I'm here and I'll work with the team. My client said to me after the first 5 interviews, I wish I had a huge gong in here, because every time I heard something so superficial, I'd want to get up, hit the gong, and send them on their merry way. So what is team? More importantly, what does team mean to you? We see a lot of commercials, read a lot of blogs, even watch a lot of hangouts that talk about the warm, fuzzy, puppy dog aspect of team. But where are teams really galvanized? Where do teams really get their energy? And more importantly, how do they sustain their energy? I think it comes from 2 places. First, I think it comes from leadership. And leadership isn't necessarily the anointed person on the team who has a few extra words after their name. That leadership doesn't come from having the best Six Sigma training, the best Kaizen training, or even the best communication skills training. That leadership comes from doing. When that team member walks into the environment, they begin to lead by example. And if the rest of the team is smart and savvy enough, they're going to follow along. I'm going to illustrate that point with a story. Actually, the story's in the 2nd chapter of my latest ebook called These 3 Things. I know, shameless self-promotion. Even I've sunk to those depths. At any rate, it's a story of 2 guys who ended up running a very successful branch of a business together. And even before they were paired, they could not stand one another. Company had been given the opportunity to run a branch of a business that was owned by another company. The other company felt that they had gotten all the profit they could out of it, put it up for sale at a very lucrative price. My client bought it and immediately appointed one of their existing general managers to head that initiative. Now, the problem is that the initiative was so large and commanded so much resource and so much energy that he really needed an assistant. But here's the problem. The person they put in charge had one way of doing business, and that was his way. Plain and simple. It was really difficult to find somebody who'd go into that environment, help him hire the people he needed to hire, help him strategize on how to grow the business, and just simply coexist with him peacefully. So after a lot of searching and a lot of interviewing, they found another candidate, and my client and I sat down with the manager. And as my client mentioned his name, the first thing that came out of the general manager's mouth was, "I should have fired him 3 years ago. Do you know that on Christmas Eve, he didn't stick around when we had an issue?" And went on and on and on. My client held firm, said, "This person's going to be your assistant." For the first month to month and a half, all they did was fight with one another. But then one day, one of them began to see some new business potential. And while they begrudgingly sat in the general manager's office and talked about ways they could grow the business, they still had their prejudices, they still had their dislikes for one another. But let's face it, they needed the job. As their success grew, their relationship grew. And it went from not being able to stand one another to having a begrudging respect for one another to becoming a well-oiled team to becoming friends. And that was 8 years ago. Today, both of these people will readily tell you that they would not be where they're at and have the insight and knowledge that they have if it wasn't for one another. And so I asked both of them one time separately, what happened? I was always afraid you guys would have loaded revolvers when I walked in the door. And they both told me a variation on this theme. We realized that in order for our larger team to grow, we had to set aside the differences we had so that we could provide stability and we could provide strength within the organization. I'm going to tell you, both of these guys were old school. Neither one of them believed in pizza or gift cards or walking around hugging one another and printing small little affirmations on their computer background. They led by example. They showed the workforce, which was an average age of about 26 people. They showed that workforce that hard work, determination, and setting aside your personal differences very often are what leads to success. The media and so many authors, bloggers, video bloggers, paint the notion of teamwork as walking down the street singing a catchy tune with our arms around one another. Teamwork, real teamwork like success that I talked about yesterday in Motivation Monday, is often galvanized and brought to light in the areas of our lives, our businesses, and our relationships that we'd rather not deal with. In a few minutes, I'm going to go to a meeting with a client that I don't particularly care for. But every month, I cash his check. I owe it to him to be part of his team or not. And that's the choice we have. So, hope you have a great Tuesday. I will talk to you soon, and when I do, part of my team has put together a wonderful new backdrop for me. So I hope to talk with you soon. Please give me some feedback, and as always, have a terrific Team Tuesday.